Hello everyone, welcome back to Too Sweet MTG and welcome to another Commander Deck Tech. In today's video, we are continuing to look at some of the awesome cards from the new Lord of the Rings set. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Aragorn the Uniter. It is a red, green, white and a blue for a 5/5 legendary creature, human noble. It has, whenever you cast a white spell, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, Aragorn the Uniter deals 3 damage to target opponent. And finally, whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until end of turn. This is a very cool commander with a ton of possibilities. In fact, one of the hardest things to work out with these multicolor legendaries is how best to build them. With Aragorn, we could build around just one of those abilities and really try to focus down. But if I'm honest, I'm a bit greedy and I want to get multiple triggers off of Aragorn. The way we can do that is by casting multicolored spells. If we cast a spell that's, say, green and white, Aragorn doesn't care that it's just one card. It sees that we cast a green spell and a white spell, so we get both the token from the white spell being cast and a creature getting pumped +4/+4 from a green spell being cast. What this means is that this deck is going to be absolutely brimming with really good multicolored spells wherever possible. There will also be a hint of a legendary creature subtheme, basically because there's just so many good ones out there it kind of makes sense to lean into it. The main place that we will have single-coloured spells is in our ramp, because it is by far the best way to have a decent mana base on any kind of a budget. If you have triomes and fetches, by all means jam them in, but the idea of this video is that it will work with any budget. Before we jump in, a quick note on how this video will work. What we'll be doing is giving you a breakdown of all the different types of sections that you need to make the deck work. We won't be giving you a full deck list, rather we'll be giving you all the categories and the number of cards in each category that you need to run. You can then pick the ones that suit your budget or your playstyle. All the sections and any cards we mentioned will be down in the description below. First up, let's talk about some multicolored matters cards. These are cards that reward us for just playing a bunch of colors. First up, we have Hero of Precinct One and General Ferrous Rokiric. These are fantastic cards that reward us with tokens whenever we cast a multicolored spell, which you will see very quickly will be a massive chunk of the deck. As Aragorn also makes 1/1s when we cast a white spell, we're going to end up with a pretty solid board state that these will really help. Next we have Fallaji Wayfarer, which lets us help use those tokens and our other creatures to help cast our other spells by giving all our multicolored spells convoke. Even if all this does is just helps us pay for command attacks with our tokens, it will be worth it. Then we have some cards that buff up the multicolored creatures that we will be running, with Glass of the Guildpact, Knight of New Alara and Rienne, Angel of Rebirth. These importantly also buff up our commander as well, and then if we cast some green spells we can give Aragorn +4/+4. I'll be honest, we could very easily turn Aragorn into a 21-point commander damage win condition. We then have Maze Behemoth, a really nice budget card that gives all our multicolored creatures trample, just very solid and nice and cheap. Next up is our ramp section. This is going to be pretty chunky compared to other decks because we also need a good amount of fixing for all the multicolored cards that we want to be running. First up we have some mana dorks. We have some cheap green creatures with Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling and Noble Hierarch. But then we have the slightly pricey but still recently reprinted and fantastic Bloom Tender. And then we have Faeburrow Elder, which does a similar job to the Bloom Tender, but as it's also a multicolored spell will trigger a bunch of other stuff that we care about. Next we have some spells that turn all of our other creatures into mana dorks, with Cryptolith Rite and Inga and Esika. This deck will be making a bunch of tokens, and these cards turning them into Birds of Paradises will be fantastic. Next up we have our rampant growth effects that go and get lands out of the deck and put them into play. In this build we really want the cards that go and get non-basic lands from our deck, so cards like Farseek, Nature's Law, 3 Visits and Skyshroud Claim are essential. These are perfect for our deck as they can go and potentially get something like a Triome, or in more budget builds can go and get a Dominar United tap land as well. Then finally we have some mana rocks. Cards like Arcane Signet are a great way of hitting our colours while also ramping us. Chromatic Lantern turns all of our lands into command towers, which we love, and I know I play way too much of this card, but in this deck it will be fantastic. Then we have Tome of the Guildpact, which I will be honest might actually be a little bit too expensive to cast for a rock that only generates 1 mana, but the additional card draw when we play multicolored spell will be really nice and it means it might be perfect for a lower powered playgroup. Next up we have our card draw. We have a couple of different cool options for us to look at. First up is Chulane, Teller of Tales, a busted legendary creature that draws us a card whenever we cast a creature spell, and then lets us put a land from our hand into play as well. Then we have Faramir, Steward of Gondor and Éomer, King of Rohan. These both bring the monarchy into the game, thematically fantastic, and also just really great at letting us draw some cards. With all the tokens this deck will have lying around, we should easily be able to keep the monarch for us to draw a bunch of cards over the course of a game. We then have Faramir, Prince of Ithilien. This either draws us cards or makes us 3 1/1 tokens, which is just going to be very solid. Then next we have a bunch of multicolored spells that draw us cards while also being multicolored spells that trigger a bunch of abilities off of Aragorn. Cards like Growth Spiral, Eureka Moment, and Escape to the Wilds that let us play extra lands each turn will be very solid at ramping us as well. Depending on the makeup of your multicolored creatures, Mass Appeal might end up drawing us a bunch of cards as well. A lot of our creatures are going to be humans, and Aragorn also makes them. It's not hard to see a world where this is consistently drawing us 4 or 5 cards for just 3 mana, which is going to be very solid. We then have Elegeth Crossroads of Gur. This might be a little cute, but with Aragorn, we scry whenever we cast a blue spell. Elegeth turns that scry into draw 2, which personally I think is pretty good. And then finally we have Skullclamp. Our commander makes 1/1s. We might as well take advantage of that. It doesn't synergize outside of that with the deck, but sometimes a good card is just a good card. Next up is our interaction section. Like with most decks, we're going to start with 8 bits and go higher the more competitive the playgroup. First we have Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. They're the most efficient bits of removal available, they're in our colours, they get in the deck. Then we have Friendly Rivalry, a great multicoloured punch effect that for just 2 mana can easily take out a creature. The green in the spell as well will also mean Aragorn is nice and big. Then, let's get a little bit greedy with some charms. There's plenty of these out there that do an immense amount of cool things. They could be harder to run on a budget mana base, but if I'm being honest, they really reward us in this deck and have a ton of flexibility. Each one of these triggering 3 abilities on Aragorn is just going to be fantastic. We also have plenty of options for some good board wipes as well. I would personally want board wipes that are 2 colours, just for that additional value, and especially the ones with blue so we get the scry with Aragorn so we can set ourselves up for the next turn to rebuild. Time Wipe, also bouncing Aragorn to our hand before the board is wrathed, is going to be pretty cool. Then lastly, these are very much optional if you have them, but another reward for playing so many multicoloured spells is that we easily will have something to pitch in our hand to the Evoke Elementals from Modern Horizons 2. Subtlety can put an opponent's commander on layaway for a turn, Fury can kill a ton of good utility creatures or hit a planeswalker, and then Solitude is just another great way of exiling a key threat. Next up is a little bit of protection. With all the fixing needed to get Aragorn down, we want him sticking around so he can control the game and give us a ton of value, and these spells help us do that. First up, we have some multicoloured spells. We have Boris Charm, which can give our whole board indestructible, while also having the flexibility of giving maybe our commander double strike. Dovin's Veto is a great counterspell for when we absolutely, positively need to stop a kill spell or a board wipe. And then we have Simic Charm, which can also pump up Aragorn a ton, but importantly can also make it hexproof to dodge a removal spell, or at its worst case can bounce Aragorn away from a board wipe. Next we have some creatures to protect Aragorn. We have Pippin, Guard of the Citadel, which has a great Mother of Runes effect on a multicoloured creature body, and then Boromir, Warden of the Tower, which is a very solid way of giving our board indestructible. We then have a massive flavour win with Arwen, Mortal Queen, a fantastic way of saving Aragorn for a turn, while also being a multicoloured creature to trigger everything that we're doing. Then lastly, we have Surek Dragonclaw, a great way of getting around any pesky control players by making all of our creatures uncounterable, while also giving all of our other creatures trample as well. Okay, we have the deck, we have a bunch of cool spells, let's go over some dedicated ways of winning the game. First we have some more awesome multicoloured creatures that make us some tokens, with cards like Tauren, Fist of Angels, and Ginny Fae, Jetmir's Second. Tauren makes creatures when we play creatures, and then Ginny Fae doubles up all of our tokens to either be 2/2 Hasty Cats or 3/1 Vigilant Dogs. We can then use a card like Jetmir to make those tokens and all of our other creatures absolutely huge, as all we need is 9 creatures in play to give everything plus 3/0, Vigilance, Trample, and importantly, Double Strike. We then have some more ways of getting our creatures through for damage, with cards like Champion of Lambalt, which will get really big really quickly in this deck and make our whole team unblockable, and then we have Éowyn Fearless Knight, which is a great removal spell for a large creature, but it then gives a bunch of our legendary creatures protection, which importantly also means unblockable from a creature that shares a colour of the exiled creature. Another great way of making our board unblockable is with another Aragorn, King of Gondor. It comes in, makes us the Monarch, which we love, and then when it attacks, if we are still the Monarch, our creatures can't be blocked, which is a very scary way of winning a game of Magic. We then have 4th Eolingus, a great spell that makes a bunch of hasty and tramply knights, which is a fantastic mana sink for late in the game, and for when we just need to take out an opponent. If for whatever reason we don't take out the opponent, we still become the Monarch, which is just fantastic. Then we have a 3-colour end the game bomb with Titanic Ultimatum. We're definitely leaning full into the multicolored aspect with this card, but why not? It's a great way of making our board terrifying. Rounding off the deck with some utility lands, we can't run too many because of the mana requirements of this deck. What we can run is cards like Path of Ancestry and Pillar of the Perunes, which importantly tap for any colour. This deck loves as many copies of Command Tower as feasibly possible, on top of all your jewels and all your triumphs and such. The only pure utility lands that we can run need to tap for colours of mana. Minas Tirith is a great bit of card draw, and then Rivendell is a nice bit of extra card selection, while importantly letting us cast our multicolored spells. So thank you all very much for watching. Do let me know down in the comments what other commanders from the Lord of the Rings set you would like to see. I've seen a couple of comments for some Saurons. I've seen a couple of comments for a Tom Bombadil. Maybe they'll be the next video. Either way, the only way to find out is to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. We are still racing towards 100,000 subscribers. There is still 97,000 to go, so please hit that subscribe button. It would really help me out. But anyway, until next time, I'll see you all soon. Goodbye.